You've died. You're at the pearly gates. To gain entry into heaven, you have to answer, your best answer, what are UFOs?
Ooh! This question has been such an elusive question for such a long time, you know. It is one of these esoteric topics, but like with any esoteric topic, to the masses, it is elusive. But there is an answer. There is an answer. What I find most fascinating is because we don't take this subject matter seriously, or at least we haven't been taking it seriously for quite some time. Most people, when they address this question of what are UFOs, they move into the realm of pure hypothesis. They build their ideas of air and imagination, and we have everything from flying leprechauns to ghosts to apparitions, and obviously we've now seen the term UFO expand to UAP, right? Which pretty much just muddies the concept, right? Because initially, at least we knew that we were dealing with something that was unidentified here, that based on our awareness, we knew that this thing was not ours, right? And as you would imagine, it needed to be run by some kind of intelligent being, right? So the natural conclusion is that we're dealing with extraterrestrial beings here. That would be the obvious deduction. But we moved into this realm ever since the David Grush testimony that was given. We've started seeing this new term, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is supposed to expand the conversation around what it could be. Well, we don't know what this thing is. It could be a weather balloon. It could be ghosts. It could be extra-dimensional, extra-temporal. We don't know what they are. But, of course, anyone that is actually deeply involved in this thing realizes that, well, there are many people that do know what we're dealing with. The legacy program, the government, black ops, national security state, call them what you will. But let's at least hear what some of the people on the panel had to say in regards to what these things were. UAPs, UFOs. I think we all know ultimately what we're talking about.
Why do I always have to go first? I would have had a different answer a couple years ago, and have been in a kind of felt like a graduate school of ufology, having amazing conversations with my friend Dave and with friends of Dave and now friends of the podcast. But so it's changed. I feel like there's something much closer to us than far away from us. It feels like the proximity has taken me off guard. Mallory, like you, I feel kind of like I thought our podcast, I could represent the bridge to folks that aren't, really gone down every rabbit hole yet. So I still kind of internally grapple with certain topics. Do I believe that now? Is that something that I'm believing now? Is that? But I do think there is something to this simulation idea that feels like it connects somehow, and I do feel like there is this growing sense of energy of different topics coming at us, whether it's the telepathy tapes, whether it's sort of whistleblowers, whether it's kind of ghost story. Like, it is feeling like things are accelerating and starting to move towards a sort of central point of proximity. And so I would answer that it feels like what we might have defined as souls, but is beginning to kind of take on a different form in my mind. And it's challenging for me because it takes away some of the romanticism of what I thought it was. Even in I'm semi-religious, I don't know, I'm like, but particularly when someone close to you passes while you're deep diving into this topic, it brings up all kinds of fascinating questions. We were just talking about before the thing, John Mack, and we were talking about the Blumenthal book about his life, which was excellent. And and this quote that was attributed to someone that had worked with John or was very close with him, may have been his wife. I'm trying to remember from the book, but he had sent a message back. At least that was the feeling. Richard didn't claim that this was going to be, he was just saying this was a story told to me, but what he said was, it's not what you think. And that was kind of intense. When I read it, and it was sort of moving, but also, yeah, it's not something that, sits perfectly well yet, but I would say that's the closest I can do to an answer.
Yeah.
That was the most convoluted, airy-fairy answer I think I've heard yet. And this is how the vast majority of people will address this question. This is what I find so frustrating about this subject matter, that because most people don't look at this thing as anything that isn't concrete, because they haven't really looked at the evidence, they think it's an area that is extremely vague. Obviously, there's misinformation, there's disinformation, but ultimately, I'd just say there's just ignorance, by large, in part of the deep state, Black Ops, essentially, the organization that is responsible for keeping us in the know in regards to what's going on, are the very organization that are deceiving us a lot of the time, your governments and so forth. But ultimately, we only have to rely on ourselves, for the truth, to look within and to take the steps to learn what we can about this universe. But I definitely find that people, when they are broached with this question of what UFOs are, they tend to give these very convoluted answers, and it's connected to the paranormal and mystical, when there is absolutely a definitive answer in regards to what's going on.
He was going to go to the trouble. He could have said what it was.
I know.
Yeah. Jesus.
I know.
It's not
time
what
limit,
you think.
perhaps.
I'm going to be haunted by that. It's not what you think.
I know.
Jesus. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
When does a psychiatrist ever say anything?
That's true.
So was that so I'd stop thinking you were all bullshit?
Thought experiment.
Yeah, and it's I think true. Like, one of the things we talk about is, like, since we started doing this podcast, and for me, just since getting into this, the UFO is the thing that keeps kicking the shit out of your aperture of credulity. Like, it keeps telling you, like, every time you think, I don't have to think that is serious. And then you go, oh, it is. And it's like, for me, it was like, I thought, okay, you get drawn. I think the gateway drug is machines, flying machines, alien machines, flying saucers. So you get sucked in by that. That's the hook that gets you. And it gradually, you just get drawn further and further in until you realize that all the things you were certain about were it was just hubristic, and you have to, be able to be open to the notion that you're wrong about everything all the bloody time. And as a really arrogant young atheist, I would have hated me right now. So
okay, but I'm going to press you a little further. What are UFOs?
What are UFOs?
Your absolute best guess available to you is, what are they?
These people are answering questions like politicians. And look, it's a difficult question when you essentially have no real grounding for what these things are. And there are so many different perspectives on this thing. But I find this, once again, so indicative of how most people look at this subject matter. And this is a panel of people that are supposed to be at the top of their game on this subject matter. Some apparently podcasters and ufologists. But one of the things I've definitely found is that the vast, vast, vast majority of people, I would say well over 95, 98% of people, have some kind of conjecture, hypothesis that is meeting with their worldview in regards to what UFOs are. And most of the people haven't looked at the verifiable evidence in regards to this thing, haven't looked at much of the data, don't look at this thing from an evidentiary standpoint. They just look at this thing in terms of what they want things to be, or just complete ambivalence. And a lot of people have this mindset of, well, I've channeled this information from the Arcturians, therefore I believe it's real. And if you're relying on that kind of stuff and just complete hearsay, or you haven't cross-referenced enough multiple sources, the theme as to what's going on here does not become real to you, doesn't become clear.
The best I can do is lie to you because we're in a panel and it's what you want. because I honestly, I don't have a clue. I don't think I've come any closer in, I would say, about the last like almost 10 years of really thinking seriously
Is
about
there a
it.
list of options in your mind?
I mean, there's a list of options like where they're from that are like really kind of less interesting. Whether they are extraterrestrial, whether they are ultra-terrestrial, they are from here, or they are extratempestrial, as our friend Michael Masters calls it. And I mean, I have a preference more than an idea. My preference is I hope they're extraterrestrial.
Amen.
Yeah, because I want to think there's somebody got here, somebody was able to do it, and that means that maybe we'll get to do it. Whereas if it's us from the future, then it feels like we're still trapped here with ourselves.
It's always such a
And that's not exciting to me.
yeah. I agree. It's always the lamest option. Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, now let's hear from Danny Sheehan, who is probably the only person on this panel that is really qualified to speak about this issue. And hopefully this guy has a cohesive answer to the question. Let's see what Danny Sheehan has to say in regards to what UFOs are. What's going on? Let's get it.
I mean, given the fact that there's like 500 billion star systems just in our galaxy, and that the best estimate is that at least 20% of them have rock-hard planets in the Goldilocks zone of their respective stars, and that our planet clearly gestates life. Others have as well.
Drake's
so
equation.
the big operative question as to whether they're extraterrestrial sentient beings just reduces itself to the Carl Sagan question. When I have conversations with Carl Sagan about this, and he said, well, they just can't get here because, of course, no material object can be accelerated faster than the speed of light because it would reach absolute mass. It wouldn't be able to be accelerated. Well, it turns out that's not true. We now know from lots of experiments that have been done that we're knocking on the door right now of being able to propel objects faster than the speed of light. And I believe that after all is said and done, that while there are different phenomena that have been characterized as UFOs, I've completely rejected the national security state effort to extend it to be, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, which includes ghosts and leprechauns and Bigfoot and the Skinwalker and all
Watch
that.
it.
I'm just saying, I don't think that's what UFOs are. UFOs are, in my opinion, one whole category of them is a comparatively prosaic vehicle that are capable of coming from other star systems. The way they do it is extraordinarily interesting. That it has to do with consciousness, and just like directed human consciousness toward an inchoate quantum field that can actually generate a statistically significant impact on whether the inchoate quantum field manifests in the next microsecond as a wave of energy or a particle of mass, that organic sentient consciousness directed toward the kind of inchoate field of next options in the metaphysical realm has an effect upon it collapsing the wave function. And they've been able to do that because some of these other civilizations are 6 or 7 billion years older than ours, and have had time to look into these kind of things. And that they have, in my opinion, fairly well informed, they have a technology that is capable of amping up intention directed toward material objects that can cause them to be in more than one place at the same time, the double slit experiment, and that they can actually project a craft from their star system to ours, and then through the psionic assist of the technology can ramp up the intention of it manifesting in our star system. So they don't have to travel at the linear speed of light at all. It's a different mode of transport. This is what's freaking out all of the military people. They're trying to figure out how to master that. So that's what this, in my opinion, is, that these are organic beings, a whole category of them. We have a pretty good idea of the 5 major species of them, the small grays, the tall whites, the reptilians, the obviously the mantis people, the big 7-foot ones. I've had hundreds of conversations with people over the 50 years now of doing this.
This was the fifth.
Pardon?
You only
Yeah.
said 4.
Pardon? And then there's this Nordic group.
The Nordics.
The problematic one that look just like human beings, appear to be Homo sapiens.
There could be one here tonight. I think it's Mallory.
One or more, So that I hold down a comparatively prosaic position on this. That this is the basis of the UFO phenomenon. That there's been a major ramp up in their appearances since the explosion of the nuclear weapons. That they have a genuine concern about our radiating and destroying the entire.
Ladies and gents, and that there is the legitimate answer. One of the things I love about Danny Sheehan is because he's been researching this for such a long period of time, he has a very clear, concise understanding of what is going on. And he hasn't accepted this narrative of, well, we don't know what they are, UAPs, where are they coming from. Anyone that has actually delved into this subject matter realizes that there are certain pieces of information in regards to this that are unequivocal. And those that are new to the party will start still pondering these questions like, what are these things? Are they human? Are they non-human? But it's been well established, ladies and gents, that we're dealing with extraterrestrial beings. They are biological entities. They are over 30,000 texts from civilizations all around the world making reference to these different beings. Every culture has reference to these beings. The American Indians would refer to the Kachinas, the South Africans, the Chitahuri. They've been referred to under many different names, the Draco. I mean, there is so much lore around this kind of stuff. And just in the modern history, for those that have had the luxury of gaining access to people that have either had close encounters and have delved into this subject matter with them, or people that have come across the confidential material, or have just done the research and pieced together the many, many reports to gain an understanding of the core thread of truth behind what is going on, it's unequivocally, unassailably, definitively clear that we are dealing with a non-human biological intelligence, something that is of actual physicality. Everything from their origins to their craft, we know a lot about. The United States government and other governments around the world have spent the last several decades reverse engineering this craft. They are not necessarily little green men from Mars, but they are beings, and they're not. And it's not to eliminate this from the equation. There are many different paranormal things that might be taking place, but the idea of putting all of this in the same realm as UFOs is a way of obfuscating the reality of what is going on, that we are dealing with extraterrestrial beings here. The whole concept of UFO is pretty much just a term that reflects that we're dealing with craft that is not man-made. That's the basic idea initially around this thing. Yes, it stands for unidentified flying objects, but if they were identified, well, we wouldn't be calling them, if they were man-made, we'd be calling them unidentified. We'd just be calling them planes and crafts and so forth. But we're dealing with crafts that are not of this terrestrial origin. And obviously something's got to be controlling this craft, and we're dealing with life forms, beings here. And this notion that they're not beings from outside of our planet, it's so ridiculous that people have bought into this notion that we're the only beings in this universe. How retarded would you have to sink your mind in order to buy into something like that? The level of arrogance and the level of brainwashing sometimes is just beyond my imagination. And I'm a pretty imaginative kind of guy, But I love the fact that if you went through the entire panel listening to the answers that people gave to this, the vast majority of people, and the thing is, these are not supposed to be your typical run-of-the-mill people. These are people that are essentially interested in this subject matter. These are the ufologists, and most of them are still in this place of, well, I don't know what it is. Could be this. Who knows? And anytime I've had this conversation around people, most people defer to, well, your opinion's just as good as my opinion. And it's like you're speaking to a bunch of hippies that don't believe in objective reality. They think everything is up in the air. And ladies and gentlemen, I am definitely a crystal-wearing hippie, but I am also someone that believes in evidence, science, and objective reality. And this particular phenomenon, call it what you will, UFOs, UAPs, is something that is a real thing. It's not something that's built of air and imagination. And it's so refreshing when people that have actually done the research, have spent so many decades researching this kind of stuff, have an understanding of the basic facts around this kind of stuff. That many governments around the world, many individuals have spotted these unidentified flying objects, UAPs, call them what you will. We've had recovery programs that have been running for decades now, known as the Legacy Program, known as the Majestic 12, initially coming together to form this organization to oversee what was going on with the UAP scene. And we've uncovered a lot of information in regards to not just what they look like, but where they come from. Many different races. We're dealing with many different groups here. The most commonly referred to ones are the Greys, that are said to be from the Zeta Reticula system. How do we know this? Because we've actually conducted interviews telepathically with these beings, and this has been covered in many reports. There's a well-known video of an interview with a Grey-like being known as E.T. Thor, I believe, that we had footage leaked back in 96 or 97. It's known as the Victor interview footage, and granted, any kind of footage, even back then, was dubious. It's very clear for anyone that has researched this that everything you see within that video is consistent with what you would see one of these creatures behaving like, from their appearance to their movements to the issues that being seen to be having with our atmosphere, breathing that in. But it is beyond a shadow of a doubt that we have a lot of information in regards to this topic, and it is always disconcerting when I hear people speculating about certain things that really should be a given. We are in the age of disclosure, and I would love to see, before the turn of this decade, that in the same way that we used to look at a lot of esoteric occult sciences as being mysterious and magical, we've now accepted this stuff as the norm. Certain facts in regards to the nature of reality, dealing with the spherical heliocentric galaxy and so forth, dealing with certain facts about biology, the two sexes and so forth, without having everything convoluted to the point where we can't even accept the fact that we have seen an abundance of evidence now to show that these beings are visiting planet Earth. I made reference to the Greys. There are many different others. The reptilians, known as the Draco, the mantis-like beings, the tall whites, as they've been also referred to as, these taller white like beings, the Nordics, known to be the Pleiadians, and the list goes on and on and on. This is not one phenomenon involving one species. This is a phenomenon involving many different encounters, but people often can't even get past the fact that this is a real conversation, and like to hypothesize and make these spurious claims in regards to what's going on. And this has all been fueled, I think, by the convolution of the conflation of the term UAPs with UFOs. This idea now that it's somehow supposed to represent a connection with paranormal phenomenon, when it's not to suggest that the paranormal phenomena is not a thing. Bearing in mind that if anything happens in this universe and it's real, it's real. There is no supernatural. There only that which is real. But for the purpose of understanding, we are dealing with an actual physical phenomenon here. The UFO phenomenon is something that is very much real. And it's so refreshing when you come across a speaker like Danny Sheehan that can at least break down all the ambivalence and get to the heart of what we're dealing with here. Anyway, let us know in the comments below what you thought of this video, what you think these UAPs, UFOs are. If you've had any abduction experiences, wouldn't mind getting anal probe myself, Greys, if you're out there, actually stay away, Greys. I want some of those hot Pleiadian aliens to get at me. They're a lot prettier. But in any event, until next time, as I always say, three things cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the wisdomatic truth bombs of yours truly, Chris Schul, aka the Esoteric Noetic.